All right, thanks for joining us today. We have a great episode on kind of the lock-in effect we've seen here over the last couple of years, meaning the homeowners that were fortunate enough to get into low interest rates and kind of their take on willingness to sell. We're starting to see that break loose. We're going to talk about kind of what that was, where that came from, real briefly, and then get into how that's going to affect you mainly as buyers, but to some degree as sellers. There'll be some good information in there about that. Kind of the things that are encouraging them to move, forcing them to move, um, things that you can do financially to ease some of that transition from a low interest rate to the current interest rates, what it means to you as a buyer for increased inventory because we have been so low, specifically in the valley here for so long, and talk about some Treasure Valley specific scenarios. We're going to have that discussion today with Chase Hodgson with CrossCountry Mortgage. I've got to get used to saying cross country now because of your.
Still getting used to it.
I'm glad it's on your first title here, the description that it reminds me. So that's good.
Right.
How you doing, Chase?
I'm good. I'm good, Jared. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, good to see you as well. We're seeing some shifts in the industry. This kind of lock in that we've had for the last couple of years is just you know, kind of hard gelled, if not almost cemented, the current home buyers, and been super reluctant to move, which keeps our inventory low. But we're starting to see some cracks in that cement or some movement in that area. So it's changing
Mhm.
things, changing the landscape a little bit. So.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. We've had yeah, I mean you've got people saying that they would never move, and yeah, now we're seeing it. So, yeah, it's interesting times for sure.
Well, it's interesting to see the reasons. Like some, are obvious, right? You got a job change, you got to relocate. If you have a divorce, it's usually kind of thrust upon you. But there's also some interesting scenarios I would have never thought that would, pry people out of their, sub 3% interest rates, and we're seeing it happen. So, and
Hmm.
there's tools to help them, make that transition a little less painfully. So we'll talk about all that.
Yeah.
But, well, real quick, let's do a couple of housekeeping items here, real quick, before we get into the episode. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jerod Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also sometimes referred to as MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the perfect home buying process. We've spent now over 20 years developing tools, resources, references. We're talking about podcasts, we're talking about search criteria. We're exposing some secrets to the industry, but now in a large part with Chase, we've got up to $1,000 that we're going to uh, uh, give to buyers at closing in the way of contribution towards appraisal and home inspection, just to minimize the cost and ensure some confidence. So feel free to reach out to us, either directly give us a call or certainly hit perfecthomebuyingprocess.com to kind of initiate that dialogue. But with that, let's chat a little bit about um, kind of the super unique time that we had during COVID, of super low interest rate, and how that kind of, cements people into the home that they bought, and a little bit about why they might not have wanted to be in those homes. But you went through, I mean, right? Anytime you're talking 3%, these are unheard of rates.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before, thinking back, like before COVID started and everything, we were like low fives to five, and then um, and I can remember when we first went to Summit, they dropped to like 4.5, and it was like, it was like Disneyland, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody was, we were just so excited about that, and um, never would have guessed that they'd get to where they got, right?
Right.
And obviously there's a number of factors in that, what the Fed was doing, what the, economy is doing, what, all of the assistance and stuff that they dumped in there to keep things going with all the fear that was going on. And yeah, so I mean, I closed loans in the twos. Like it's just, like that's never happened before, right? And so you don't want to say it'll never happen again because you didn't expect it the first time, but it's very likely to not happen again. And that caused it's hard to even quantify how many different reasons people like moved here during that time. Everybody thought the market was going to crash, and it didn't. And it actually, like, especially here in Idaho and some other states, it really drove um, more sales, right? And
Yeah.
not enough inventory, and people buying whatever house that they could get an accepted offer on, sight unseen, overpaying, like all of that stuff was going on. It was absolutely insane.
Well, what was
In
interesting is not only were the rates low, but the buyer interest was super high. Usually, if
Yes,
you have some type of not life event, but kind of a world event like that, that would, create a super aggressive interest rates. It's a bad time to
yeah,
usually create that type of scenario. Not that the pandemic wasn't a bad time, um, but people were pulling equity, out of their homes where they were relocating from. So the ability to buy and the interest to buy doesn't usually coincide with the low rates.
and I think that was a lot largely built off of expectation of what everybody thought was going to happen in the
Mm-hmm.
economy.
Right.
They thought it was going to crash, like, and they're so trying to get ahead of that curve, and then it didn't happen,
Well, the
right? So
inverse happened, right? Low
the
rates to keep people
low
buying,
rates
and
happened, right? But a lot of economies kept going, a lot of business kept happening, and so it just, yeah, it continued to drive that, and right, created a situation where you have high demand and low rates, and that's not normal.
yeah. Yeah, well, what I wanted to kind of get into is this perception of what rates should be, and I think it's really, skewed, right? Historical national average has been more around the 7%,
Yeah.
and we've been, considerably higher than that in the past, right? Certainly high teens, if not low 20s in the past. So the
Yes.
point of
Yes.
reference of what a realistic interest rate should be, home mortgage rate should be, has been skewed, because people that didn't know what it historically been or what the average kind of is, they're thinking, "Wow, I got to wait till it gets back into the fours or into the threes or into the twos," which
Right.
is unrealistic.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part about it, because I talk about this, think about this a lot. Historically, yes, sevens, right? Like that's kind of the historical average. Values have now been pushed up so much that I think even that needs to be adjusted, right? Like they have, like, buyers have a case for lower rates, right? Like there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it, like what they made, what income was back then versus what they were paying for homes versus all of these things. But I think enough has changed that average needs to find a new stable point, and we're just so fresh off of COVID and all that still, and now going into the unrest that we have now. I don't know what that new norm needs to be. It's realistically, it was very unhealthy for our economy for them to be as low as they were,
Yeah,
right? And we're still dealing with the repercussions of that. And
yeah,
so we don't want to see it that low, but I also think the seven average in today's market is a little unrealistic as well, right? So
yeah.
somewhere there's got to be common ground somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, well, and we'll get to talking about the tools that can kind of help them get there even before rates kind of adjust to whatever that new
Right.
normal should be, as per, income and as per new values, right? Because those two are significantly different than what you bought, 20 years ago, right? You,
Right.
you you made less, but you also paid a lot less for the house. Now, comparatively, you're not making a lot more, but the values have gone up a lot.
Right.
So anyway, we'll chat about some tools that can help you get there, but really just wanted to communicate kind of what we've seen in the last couple of years is this disinterest, that initially started as inability to move, because if you were looking at a move up, to go from a 2 or a 3% to a 5, 6, 7%, really you couldn't purchase a home at a much higher value, because the rates offset that. So even if you were interested in doing it, you couldn't mathematically make it make sense because you were, you know, essentially paying. Um, you couldn't move up your budget because the rate corrected it so much. You kind of had to move your budget down to adjust for the rate, which wasn't
Yeah.
helpful trying to buy a bigger, house.
Right, right, absolutely. And there's yeah, the when you talk about what happened, right, and the amount of people that were overpaying in the inflated market because of the low interest rates and high demand, there was not a crash per se, but there was some adjustment there, and that, so that complicated it as well, right? Super low interest and not necessarily the equity right off the bat, right? It took a few years, right, for people to start gaining equity and stuff again.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it made it very difficult for people to do anything for a while.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, time goes by. I can't move. I don't want to move. Um, Suppresses inventory, right? Almost everything went in the new home construction arena because obviously, if existing homes aren't being put on the market, then you got to build new
Right.
inventory. So
Right.
builders benefited from that significantly because they were one of the few options. Um, but now we're seeing a number of things happen. Like I said, the obvious ones are I got a job, a new job, uh, either a promotion or for a new employer, I got to move, or we had a divorce. But we're even starting to see folks that bought during COVID, but in a hyper competitive market, were buying homes that lacked uh, certain things that a homeowner would otherwise have preferred to have. Right, your checklist of the things, top 5 things that you wanted, you had to nail it down to the top 2 or 3 if you're lucky because
Right.
it was so competitive. And maybe you wanted that fourth bedroom, but because it's so competitive and prices are going up, you needed 3. But now you've got, your kids getting bigger, or now you have a new child in the house or whatever, and you're kind of maxing out your home, and you're like, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and lose this low rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? So the we're definitely seeing a bunch of that there, and for a lot of reasons. Um, I can't, man. I've talked to a lot of past clients that literally just like you said, they bought what they didn't. The house didn't suit them, right?
Right.
That's one of the biggest factors. Um, but also, there's so many life events that happen in the
Mm-hmm.
meantime, right? Like I had another client that they had another baby. Their house didn't fit them.
Yep.
Um, you know, all kinds of things happen and to push those people into it. Now, I still believe though that a lot of the inventory that we're seeing is still not hitting the market, and I don't know that it will, right? So it changes the market in that the people still need to move, right? They want to make a change, they need to make a change, but is it make more sense for them to keep that property and turn it into an investment or something of that nature, right? So it's still carrying some effect on the availability of existing homes in our market today.
Yeah. 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 So I think it's, definitely, it's certainly the people that need to move. They're just like, okay, I'm not going to get that rate back again. Hopefully their household income went up enough to offset the interest rate. But let's talk about this idea of rate buy down. So if you're in it, let's just say you're in a 3 and now you're looking at mid 6s.
Mhm.
Let's talk about these seller concessions or these buyer rate buy downs to help correct that. Why don't you kind of describe the evolution of that, how we get it from sellers, and how even a buyer themselves could contribute to that to bring that rate down,
Yeah,
whether it's
so it's interesting that because we've actually seen some, seen some change in the way that that works. And so, there for a while, pretty much anybody could do the buy down, and then it had to be a seller's concession, and now a percentage of it the buyers can contribute to. But basically, we're still in a market, and I'm sure you can attest to this. So far, we're still like, I think you and I predicted we'd be out of this, no seller concessions by spring. But like we talked about even back then, that's barring anything, like anything like Iran going on,
Didn't
or
see a war coming up. Yeah.
no, no,
Yeah.
and you never do. There's always that stuff that
Right.
happens, right? So,
Right.
so, so in the seller concession, you have to be in a market where seller concessions exist. That's the first thing.
Hmm.
Um, we are in that market, and so basically they're giving money for closing costs or interest rate buy down, whatever will help your situation the best. And so the temporary buy downs are a great way to maximize your savings over the upcoming years, right? There's a 3-2-1 buy down, a 2-1 buy down, a 1-1 buy down. And basically that's so a 3-2-1 would be buying your interest rate down 3 points the first year, 2 points the second year, and then floating back up to the rate that you locked it at over the third year. And so
So that
over
six
that
and a
amount,
half is becoming for that first year, that 3.5, which is closer to what you wanted to do. You've got to
right?
qualify to buy that house at the full 6.5%. But I
Mhm.
think what you're saying is that now you've got some time to save at that
Right.
reduced rate for that first year, second year, third year, depending on how you structure it.
Yeah. And the biggest idea behind that is that, realistically, everybody still believes interest rates are high, and they're gonna come down still. They're gonna settle down to a more natural spot, for our market. And in doing so, this buys you time to get there, right? Saves you money while waiting to get there.
Hmm. Hmm. So take advantage of the lower values, right? Because we're theorizing, and to some degree, we've already seen evidence of our theorizing, meaning we talked about the fact that we've got a lot of demand in our market, that it's going to start rolling on, and we're going to see values quickly go up, and we saw that briefly right before the war, kicked
Right.
in, but then it kind of went from people that both wanted and needed to buy are just the people that needing to buy now. So there's still kind of that pause, but we're now pretty highly confident that once the dust settles a little bit and there's more confidence in the buyer pool, that demand is going to kick in, values are going to go up, which are then going to offset any gain you would have in a reduction of interest rate. So
Right.
meaning you can capitalize, from your own contributions to a rate buy down or a seller contribution to get into a lower rate while the values are still down, and then correct as it makes sense via refi later. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Yep. Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. And it's not the optimal place, but and it takes evaluating your situation to make sure that it's right for you still, right? Because you don't want to get into something and then the cost, because there is a cost to the refi. Typically if you stay with your lender, there's reduced cost. But even if it's just title fees or something like that, there is a cost involved in refinance. And so you want to make sure that it does make financial sense.
Right.
For your situation and what you're buying, and kind of our expectations of where rates will go.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's uh talk about that kind of as a bridge. Well, I think we've exhausted that it's a personal scenario. Should you make the transition? What's the market look like in your price point? What you're looking for and the ability to negotiate that seller concession to help you with that, right? Because some people aren't going to be able to negotiate with the sellers because we've still got, I just got one of my listings under contract in a week, and it was a competitive situation. So depending on what price point you're at, where you're in town, like there was no negotiating from the buyer. They just came in strong, and so it's going to be a case by case scenario as to whether or
Right.
not we can help get that from the seller, or it makes sense for you as the buyer to bring your own monies to the table to buy it down, and then how you structure it, right? Is it a 3-2-1? Is it a permanent? you know, what's
Yeah.
available and what makes sense for you personally.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to take a look at that. And I like, to your point, I think that where you didn't have any negotiation whatsoever, right? Like we're still in a people need to realize that we're still in a low inventory environment here in our valley. And so, there's certain price points that are sitting a little bit longer. Um, unfortunately, our first time home buyers, they don't have that, that ability to negotiate. So, it won't always be available, but where it is, we can definitely help, try and mitigate some of those costs. But on a 3-2-1, if there's enough seller concessions, then typically it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to save money.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about understanding these seller concessions versus trying to get a good deal in the way of a price reduction, right? You can quite often get a better long-term fit for you as a buyer through negotiating the seller concession than trying to get the house at a lesser price,
Right.
because you're right, you're paying less interest rate on a large number, so that can make sense more often.
Yeah, it does. It saves you more monthly. So, I mean, a good rule of thumb, depending on where rates are, $50 to $60 a month is what you're going to save for every additional $10,000 you put down, right? And so, if you're getting a $20,000 to $30,000 seller concession, then you gets you to a 3-2-1 buy down or a 2-1 buy down where you can save anywhere from 250 to 400 a month, right? Like the putting that money as taking it off the cost or putting it as additional down payment, if it's your cash, then it just can't compete
Yeah.
to the amount you can save monthly, by reducing the interest rate by 2 points.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and talking about this increased inventory, I'm sure the audience is probably a little confused because now we're talking about increased inventory, but we've been low inventory and arguably are going to be low inventory for this foreseeable future. So it's not like, all of a sudden it's a great buyer's market. It can be in certain areas at certain price points. You can negotiate, but generally speaking, our market, and even nationally, there's a low inventory. So we're getting more, but we've been super low. So
Yeah.
we're feeling some relief, but not a major amount of relief where buyers are just able to kind of go throw their weight around and get, strong deals, but those can be had. And I think the most important thing to negotiate quite often is that buy down, whether it's short, mid, or long term.
Yeah, and I think understanding too that like you said, nationally we're behind, right? That we're for sure behind nationally on what we need. We're still in the biggest buyer pool that the country's ever seen of people needing housing, and there's micro markets within that, and even within the Treasure Valley, there's different markets depending on price point or what part of the valley that you're in, and they're all affected differently, but overall, we're still in a low inventory environment.
Yeah, which is good for people that do get into home ownership because
Hmm.
it strengthens the home market, right? You have low inventory, it keeps values strong, um, versus a whole glut of inventory. Like, great, I got a whole bunch more choices, but then, are we starting to flood the market with more inventory that doesn't map to demand? So I think what we're trying to say is inventory's low, values are going up out of any point in time where we're starting to see more options in the way of inventory to find, but yet still be able to find negotiating options in certain price points in certain areas. That's kind of a little bit of a sweet spot, right? We've had the post COVID value correction, right? Because we were way too high because people were throwing money around. We've corrected or adjusted that. We're at where we
Right?
should be. Over the last year and a half, we've seen appreciation go up, however, slightly, but it is still going up.
Still
Um,
increasing.
yeah, but now we're starting to see people move, which helps buyers because there's more inventory. and more likelihood of sellers to buy. So I guess it's just a lot of words to say.
Yeah.
It could be a sweet spot for you, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is, and it really, yeah, it's. I, I get tired of saying the same thing, right? Like I really think that, like you touched on earlier, that eventually when things settle down, there is going to be a substantial, you know, um, increase in appreciation. So in my personal opinion, yeah, I think now is still a good time. Like if it's right for you and you can afford it, now's a good time. Whether you need to sell the house you're in, to make it work, or it possibly turning that into an investment property, which I still think we're seeing a lot of that, which is why the majority of our homes here are new construction. That's where a lot of our inventory is coming from. Is that not right?
Ask that question again.
A lot of our inventory is new construction and not resale, correct?
Yeah, we're still above, hovering at just above 50%,
Yeah. So,
which
um,
is a lot.
it's a lot. Yeah. Half and half is not a normal,
Right,
for that.
right.
And so yeah, I think that, that shows you right there that we didn't have the homes for the population that we have. We still have people moving here, um, on top of the generations hitting that home buying age. Um, and so it's, you're still going to be in a shortage, which is once people, the more, each month, the more and more people feel more comfortable about buying, then the more the demand goes up, which will drive appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, we just want to point that out for those folks that think we're too high on home values because, comparatively speaking, California's, Washington's, Oregon's, maybe not so much Washington, but we're still uh, more affordable than the states that people are relocating to. Yes, they're not as affordable as we once were, and that's a bummer. But I just don't see us getting back to that for the same reasons: inventory low, demand high, and that's basic economics. You're not going to get away from that. So to
Right.
to think I'm just going to wait it out, I don't think hope is a good strategy, as we talked about at
No, I don't. I don't.
before
And
the
it's,
show.
the writing's kind of on the wall here in the valley with, business expanding here, major businesses expansions here like Micron, new businesses moving here. The valley's just growing. It's just the way it is. And so, you take advantage of it now is the best advice I could give anybody.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would dispute the fact that our valley is going to grow significantly over the next decade or two. I can't, there's nothing I would see in the foreseeable future. Actually, I only see evidence that it's going to grow at a faster pace and is more likely to happen, right? You got the Amazons here, been here, the Meta's here, been here for a little bit. Micron is blowing up. I mean, there's just really no indication that we're not going to be, whether it's good or bad, we're not going to be a Seattle or a Phoenix or, anything like that in the near future, but we're not, the Boise we once were, where we had, farmland separating, Boise from Meridian and Meridian to Nampa, like all that's, closing in, but we're not really geographically constrained to where, or landlocked where we couldn't just, we got plenty of room to build, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, our expand. Yeah, it's not like, I mean, look how big Salt Lake got, and they just have that one corridor, right? And eh, we don't have that, right? So as long as the demand stays, they're going to continue to build houses, and we have plenty of room for it.
Yeah. 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 So just kind of wrap things up. We are about the half an hour mark, but I had a couple of, Treasure Valley specific things that I thought was interesting anecdotal evidence of people shifting. We talked about kind of the people that need to move, and then now the people that want to move, right? I got a couple of buyers. They're building new construction because, in large part, because they wanted RV bays for their. So we've even got folks that are using these tools to make shifts into different properties for things like that. I don't want to go get my RV from storage. I want it in my garage. Obviously there's bells and whistles they're going to get in new construction that kind of make it nice too. But for the most part, we're seeing people open up to this idea that, you know what, that was a great time in history that I got that great rate, but I can't sit here forever and not look at some of the lifestyle opportunities
Right.
that are afforded by making a shift. So we're seeing more of that, and I think it's a good time for buyers to start looking around to see if
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's been like that. I mean, I feel like we've been in the same place now for about a year, right?
Yeah, if not two. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, if not two, right?
yeah,
And it's, those who continue to take advantage are winning, right? Because of, that's the other thing is expectations of appreciation, right? The longer you wait, the more you're going to pay, as opposed to while you're waiting, you're building wealth through appreciation.
yeah,
So, it's just a good time. Just a
yeah.
if you can afford it, definitely reach out so we can help you through that.
Yeah, and just know, if it's not good timing, 'cause again, we keep referencing, in general, I think timing is good, but we have a hypersensitivity to your personal situation, and we
Yeah,
just want to chat about what it looks like for you, and we'll be the first one to tell you it's not a good time for you if it's not, or
right.
we should do these things here and there, or our pace is your pace type of thing. We're not in any rush scenario. We're not antsy to help you hurry up and buy a home. It's when it makes sense, right? Because we want clients for life, and rushing in somebody into anything isn't accomplishing that objective.
Right.
So all right, well, good conversation. I think a lot of good uh, uh, what ifs were talked about, and hopefully it spawned some thoughts for folks to process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's always
all
fun.
right,
Always
well,
talking.
yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, Chase. Well, as always, man, we appreciate you jumping on and sharing your perspective from the lending side, and bringing value to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. All right. Other than that, we'll wish everybody a blessed one. Take care.
Take care.